Welcome to Adam's Athenaeum. Let's take a look together through the news and records of our times as we try to shed light upon the unvarnished truth. Thanks for coming back as we talk about the tragedy in our culture for today's episode. Now, where do we begin? Do we talk about the recent mass shootings, or should we go back to January 6, 2021? Should we go back even further to the riots of 2020? We could start in 2020. We had BLM and Antifa riots, Patriot Prayer, fighting Antifa and BLM in the streets of Portland and Washington. And the cops, for the most part, did not intervene, didn't put a stop to the violence, and police support went down. George Floyd happened, and of course, police support went down temporarily and support for BLM went up. And then we started to see the anti-cop rhetoric increase drastically. We started to see people chanting death to cops. We started to see people hunting down and shooting and killing cops in their vehicles. Just crazy things. And then we started hearing the defund the police movement. Well, I think we're starting to finally see some of the consequences of all of this. I think personally that the defund the police movement created part and parcel the response in the Uvalde shooting. I may be wrong, but I think to some degree that our culture does not support police officers or the judgments that they have to make in critical split-second moments. And I also think that as a country, we don't give enough time or thought to the actions that the police take. We'll get into that later. For now, let's just start talking about the Uvalde shooting and the Buffalo shooting. Both of them were committed by young males, both with rifles. Both seemed to know exactly what they were doing, 100% prepared to do what they were going to do. Both seemed to be looking for notoriety, and they got it. Their names are used everywhere. They're being talked about. Their names and their faces are being put on some of the major news channels, and we've got to quit doing that. These people are scum. They're evil trash. Now, I get it. Maybe these kids, a couple days before, a month before, years before, maybe these were good kids. Maybe they just had a bad upbringing. Maybe they had a bad day. Maybe there was mental health issues. These investigations are still ongoing. But there's something in the culture that has us sick. Guns have been around for hundreds of years. And it's only recently that mass shootings have gone up to 30, 40 a year in the United States. Well, that says something, doesn't it? We've been armed for hundreds of years, and this hasn't been a problem. But something now in our culture is making us want to kill each other, fight violently with each other, degrade each other, and just tear each other's name and reputations apart. What happened to the days of helping your fellow man, having a barbecue, inviting poor people, homeless people who couldn't afford to eat otherwise? What happened to going to church? That's on me too. I don't go to church. I still read my Bible, but I know that's not enough. I know that church and the sermon by the priest when they're talking about the Gospels, that helps bring ancient words to some kind of modern relevancy. They kind of interpret the Bible and help you to see why it's relevant and how you can apply it to whatever's going on in the current society. We've lost that. A lot of people don't trust the church. A lot of people don't respect the church. Well, with that, you lose some of your morals, you lose some of your ethics, because you're not reminded every day, every week, or every month, or major holiday, however often you go to church, you aren't being reminded anymore to be a good person, to not to steal, to honor your mother and your father. to not have false gods. Nowadays, I mean, it's just a tragedy. We've got mass shootings, we've got stabbings, robberies, domestic violence, uh, petty theft, larceny, shoplifting. It's everywhere. It's nonstop. Now, not to dull down by any means what's happening with these mass shootings that recently happened. However, we're making major headline news when this happens almost every weekend in Chicago. Let's be honest. Maybe not 20 people every weekend, but multitudes of people are killed every weekend in Chicago. Black people. Some of it's from black on black violence, gang violence. Where's BLM to talk about that? Where are we to talk about that? That has an effect. Fathers being locked up, fathers not being around to raise their children, fathers owing child support, becoming homeless, and not being able to support their child or visit their child. There's a lot going on. There's a lot going on in the system. There's a lot that's got people angry, from COVID to work to housing to gas to just trying to get groceries, trying to get baby formula. It's a sad state that the country is in. And I think all of it contributes to some of these mass shootings. Of course, I think there's also the simple fact that some of these shooters just want notoriety. They want to outdo the previous most famous person, to do a school shooting, to be a serial killer. There's tons of studies on this. Going back, we overheard and we watched the effects of defund the police, the rhetoric and the actions of the defund the police movement. Police departments receive less funding, therefore they get less training, therefore they get less equipment, less body cameras. And I thought we agreed body cameras were probably a good idea for police. Well, if you defund the police, they can't afford those. They can't afford training to get better. Okay. So now we've got police in this situation. From what I've heard, who knows if this information will change, but we had in the Uvalde shooting up to 19 officers in the building while the shooting was occurring. Why did they not go in? Why did they wait for backup? Why did it take over an hour for them to make entry into the room and kill the subject? That's not always your intent to kill the subject, but it is to stop the aggressor from continuing means that will kill other people. You have to put a stop to the threat, and then you can render medical attention. But these police, why did they not go in? Well, cops are crucified nowadays. If it's a skin color narrative, if it's school shooter narrative, cops are going to be judged over microscopically for their actions. We're going to have months while this investigation continues to analyze every millisecond of every action that was taken or not taken that day. But these officers had milliseconds to make decisions that were going to impact not only their lives, but the lives of so many other teachers and children for the rest of their lives, for generations of people. I think because we've crucified cops, damned if they are and damned if they don't do good, that not only did the good cops leave right off the bat because they said, well, I'm not dealing with this woke social justice warrior movement crap, but that left the weaker officers, the ones who will enforce unconstitutional COVID restrictions. This left the officers who weren't so gallant or brave or experienced to lead the front lines now. And as a society, as a culture, they've kind of been told by us, by the media, that it doesn't matter what you do, we will scrutinize you and you will be wrong for your actions. So why risk your life? Because what if you make a wrong decision? What if you accidentally shoot an innocent kid as you're trying to shoot, the aggressor, the shooter? Are you going to get charged for accidentally shooting a kid? Maybe kid was moving as you were shooting. You just did not see the kid. I mean, there's a million what ifs, right? But there's some truths, some objective truths that I think we could all agree on. And I have some questions that I think are fair and need to be answered. Question number one: how is it that, as of right now, with the information that I have, up to 19 officers were inside of the building for over an hour while the shooting continued? There was 911 calls being placed by multiple students in both of these rooms where the shooting took place, right? There were calls from one individual child that I can remember. There was like, she called, hung up 3 minutes later, talked to the 911 operator, hung up, called back 6 minutes later, hung up, called back 3 minutes later, for nearly the entire time that this horrible situation was taking place. This child is telling the 911 operator, please send the police. There's this many people, injured. Now there's this many people injured. And then there was so many people injured that she could say, well, now there's only this many people alive. I wore this shirt specifically for this episode. I got this shirt from the unit in the military I was in, the 244th Combat Engineer Battalion. It says, if you don't stand behind our troops, please feel free to stand in front of them. That message isn't particularly important to this video, but it does remind me. When I joined the military, I knew what I signed up for, I accepted it, and I agreed to it. I knew that I'm not going to try and claim any false honor here that I don't have. I've never been deployed, but I will tell you, I signed up volunteering to join, volunteering to deploy, and I voluntarily got accepted to deploy. I did not deploy because I had an asthma attack 2 weeks before we were going to ship out, and I got sent back home, long story short. But I signed up knowing that I was going to go and fight for my country in a war, and that I might die. And I knew that I was potentially going to have to kill bad people. I knew that I was potentially going to have to kill kids. And I don't mean that in a sick or brutal or murderous or any kind of negative fashion. No, I mean, in Iraq and Afghanistan, the enemies that we were fighting, they were training kids to hate America. They were giving guns to little kids, and those kids would use those guns to attack American soldiers. There may have been a time, if I had deployed, where perhaps I would have come across a child aggressor, and I would have had a choice to make. Now, I knew what my choice was going to be, and I knew the consequences of those choices. I knew the situation, how I must analyze the situation that I was in before I ever made a decision on whether or not to fire in that scenario. I knew that I'm the kind of person to run towards the danger, to run towards the bullets. I was put here on earth to help people. I know that. My dream was to be a soldier. I knew what I signed up for, and I agreed to it. And no matter what, I would have done it. We have officers, again, up to 19 that were just the ones inside, not to mention the dozen or more armed with rifle officers outside the building. How do you sit there for over an hour listening to the screams and cries of children being shot, being maimed, and murdered? How do you listen to children scream for their mother as they bleed out, and you sit there and you wait for backup? And I don't care what your instructions were. I don't care what your protocol was. There's sometimes in life where morality is higher than rules. And sometimes you have to pick to go with your morals rather than going with the rules. Sometimes you have to ask forgiveness rather than permission. Sometimes consequences be damned. And sometimes, even if you do the right thing, you risk your own life, liberty, in pursuit of happiness, I guess you could say. How do you, as a police officer who signed up to protect the public, who knows the world we live in, there's mass shootings, there's armed criminals every day, everywhere. There's domestic violence, there's rapes, there's child kidnappings and molestation. We live in an evil, sick, twisted world. You knew that as an adult. You should have had some kind of idea. And you listened to those kids scream. And you decided, it's better for me to just sit here and wait for backup and listen to what I'm being told. Because that makes sense. Because now I won't be shot at. Now I get to go home at the end of the day. What I'm about to say is passionate. It's not fully formed. And I apologize in advance if this is too harsh and unfairly critical to these officers and to the scene or incident commander of this situation. I don't like to call for people to be fired. I've been fired. I've been laid off. I don't like the devastation that causes to your life, your family, your bills, your everything. However, these officers do not deserve to wear that badge. Not only were they derelict in their duty, they were derelict in their morality. This shooting continued because they refused to find courage to stand apart from what their leader, who was not there on the ground in that building with them, thought at the time. They decided to listen to someone who wasn't at the scene, who wasn't looking at what they were looking at, who wasn't hearing what they were hearing. They chose to listen to someone who told them to stand down and wait for backup. And more kids died because of that. As soon as one more kid died, shouldn't you have maybe started thinking about your actions? Once two more kids were shot, or you heard another volley of fire, shouldn't you have started reconsidering, am I really doing the right thing? Is sitting here and waiting for backup really the right thing right now? It wasn't. Hindsight's 2020, sure. But I can tell you as just a human being, a soldier, sure, and just me as my personality type, I would have had no second thoughts, no reservations. I would not have held back. As a police officer, if I had been responding to that scene, nothing on God's green earth would have stopped me from tracking down that shooter and ending the threat. Period. That is your job as a police officer. You should know this after Columbine, after all of the other school shootings. You do not sit and wait around for backup. You do not sit and wait around because you're hurt. You press forward, you slap a tourniquet on, and you keep going through the pain, through bleeding out. You know what they told us in the Army? You can keep running. You're not tired until your legs give out. You're not tired until you pass out from exhaustion. So yes, you can keep fighting. I don't care if you're shot. Keep moving. Kids are being shot. Are you kidding me? You're 25, 30, 40, 50 years old. Your life, your pain that you're going through in this scary moment is more valuable than that child, those multiple children that are dying in the moment. That's cowardice. And that's partially what we've done to police officers. We've made them listen to their superiors without question, and that's a problem. What is humanity without morality? People sat back and recorded George Floyd's death. And I'm sorry, but no one did a goddamn thing. What would you have done? I know what I would have done. I probably would have been sent to jail for it. I've heard the sound of a dying person before. I've seen someone take their last breaths. And when I watched that video of George Floyd, I knew exactly how I would react when I heard his last breaths coming out. I don't care that there was 3 officers there. I don't care that I would have had to most likely assault an officer. I would have kneed Derek Chauvin in the face and attacked the other police officers out of defense for George Floyd's life. And the whole time, before I attacked this officer, to clearly state my legal intent, and while attacking this officer, to clearly define my legal intent, I am not harming you, officer, with any specific violence towards you as a person. But this man is dying right now. Those are his last breaths coming out. If you don't get off right now, he's dead. You have refused to get off, and now I must take action to defend this man's life. And what did people do? They recorded until he died. And then they threw a fucking fit about it. I'm tired of social media, of all you stupid activists who think some stupid hashtag on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter is going to do something important for the world. Go talk to somebody about what's going on. Go change things that are happening. Quit filming people that are dying and intervene in the situation. I mean, if you're equipped and prepared to do so, if it's legal, and if you're prepared and capable of handling the situation, obviously. Don't go being a vigilante. That's stupid and illegal. But what is wrong with our culture? There is, a video, I can't remember who posted this. New York subway train. A woman is being raped in the middle of the day on a subway train. And people are on the train, just watching. No one said anything. No one did anything. But no one stopped it. What's wrong with us? Where's our courage? Why are we cowards? Not all of us. I know how to respond in these situations. I know how I would legally respond in these situations. Do you? Or are you just the kind of person that's going to post to Twitter or Instagram about how emotional it made you and hope that you get a bunch of likes and followers? I mean, that's a problem right there. We care more about likes and followers and our selfie lighting than things that actually matter. I'm going to start trying to mention this in every episode. Don't forget, there's a genocide happening in China. The Chinese Communist Party is committing genocide against the Uyghur Muslims. Since 2014, at least 1 million Uyghur Muslims have been detained, kidnapped, and put in concentration camps where they're being raped, mutilated, their genitalia are being scarred, women are being put on contraception, as well as being raped, gang raped, and given abortions, forced abortions, mind you. Men are having their genitalia scarred and removed, and their race, the Uyghur Muslim race or ethnicity, is being erased from history by the Chinese Communist Party. No one cares. No one's talking about it. I'm going to continue to talk about it until I'm blue in the face and everyone recognizes that it's not just America's culture that's sick. There's something wrong with the world, with the people, with our leaders, most especially. Our leaders need to change. It's a bunch of old men and women who've been living in politics their entire life. They know nothing about air conditioning. Let me just tell you all, as I work a little bit with HVAC in my line of work, someday Relatively soon, thanks to the Biden administration, we may not have air conditioning anymore. And I know that sounds radical, but certain types of refrigerants are not being made anymore thanks to global warming initiatives by the Biden administration. Maybe one day that'll affect the refrigerants used for your fridge. Oh, I know. How that'll never happen. The government could never let, our refrigerants run out for our fridges, that's vital to people living. I'm telling you, we are going to run out of refrigerant for air conditioning units, for most, typical common air conditioning units. What was a $50 refill tank a year ago is now $600 or $700 because it's no longer being made, nor will it ever be made again. The only way we can continue to get this specific type of gas is by reclaiming it from old appliances and then reselling it for $700, $800, $1,000 for 5-gallon, propane sized container of it. And there's no replacement coming. They have no idea what to do. There's no AC unit coming. There's no new type of refrigerant that can be retrofitted into every other system. Our leaders are certainly a problem. They've led us into this tragedy happening with our culture. And we followed. We allowed it. We voted them in. We got upset by a guy with wispy hair whose tan was too orange and who said some nasty things and had some serious allegations thrown at him, sure. He fought for America. He did what's right for America. I remember when gas was $2.50, $2.75 a gallon. We're almost at $5 here where I live. There's a lot happening in our world, folks. A lot of this, I'm sure, led to these mass shootings lately. People have lost hope. People have lost faith. There's no worse end than the end of hope. What do you have if you have no hope left? You don't have anything to exist for anymore. You don't have anything to fight for or to drive you on through the tough times. So we got to work. We got to work at this. Our culture, our country, our nations, and our world. We need to fix ourselves. We're sick. There's some sick people out there who need help. Not just mental help, but some type of psychological help, sure. And what's wrong with being just a friend kind of help? What's wrong with communicating with your neighbor? Do you even know your neighbor's name? Do you know anything about your neighbor? How many pets do they have? If your neighbor's injured, would you know? Would you volunteer to mow their grass? If your neighbor was injured, would you shovel their driveway in the winter? What happened to that? What happened to us knocking on our neighbor's door saying, hey, can I borrow some eggs? And then coming back a week later, hey, can I borrow some flour? What happened to friendship, to community, to family and values, to respecting life? I mean, that's what a lot of this comes down to is people don't have respect for life anymore. Women can kill babies. Men can't even abandon their kids. What I mean by that is, a woman has the choice to murder their child in the womb. Okay. But once the baby's out, a man, technically can't abandon his baby. He's stuck paying child support. So, there's a lot of things we should talk about. There's a lot of answers we should figure out. We should get off our phones and talk to people. We should go listen to people. We should go give love to other people. Make friends with people. Learn something new about someone. And in every conversation you enter, just remember, someone, perhaps the person you're talking to, knows something you don't. And through a good conversation of honesty, Maybe you can both learn something from each other. And that's great. That's what we should strive for. Don't forget to treat other people better than how you want to be treated. You got to start somewhere. If you want to be treated well, treat someone else well. If you want to be heard, listen to other people. If you need help, help someone else. The most selfish thing you can do in the world is help someone else, because that feeling of gratification it gives you, it's the best feeling in the world. That's where I'll end this video. Let's go ahead, talk it out in the comments. Share this video if you thought it was appropriate, if you liked the message and you think that it needs to be shared. I post videos every week, so don't forget to subscribe. I'll see y'all here next week, and thanks for coming.